Now, especially I would like to welcome and invite Nirvana ma'am on the stage to take her seat. Nirvana Bhandary is a Nepali feminist writer, filmmaker, and digital activist. She is the founder of the Feminism Project Nepal, a platform for women's stories and feminist expression. She also wrote and directed the documentary Moti Dubli Kali Gori, Nepali Women Reclaims Their Bodies, which explores Nepali women's experience with colorism and body shaming. She has recently published Unsanskari, a feminist life, in a collection of personal feminist essays. Now let's talk about her book. Unsanskari, a feminist life, is a collection of 8 personal feminist essays that explore what it means to be a millennial Nepali woman. The author shares her life experience, offering a critical examination of the societal issues that shape the lives of women.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. And Nirvana ji, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And also I'd like to request Nirvana ji to read a short paragraph from the book so that every one of us can be familiarized with the book.
Thank you. Ansari, everyone can hear me? Hi everyone, I'm very happy to be here. So how many of you have read the book? Okay, most of you, great. Sangisakyo, padera, or halfway, already. Thik cha yatiko bhayo? Thik cha, okay, great. For those who haven't read, I guess, I want to give a little bit of context. Ani padisakeko मान्छेहरुलाई, I guess it's a refresher. So सानो segment पढ्छु म है. Ani this is from the feminism chapter. So I'll just be reading for about 5 minutes. Internalized misogyny. I had a friend named Angela a few years ago. She was a very intelligent, adventurous, and independent woman, and we had bonded over our wanderlust and thirst for life. I had assumed that she would share the same feminist principles as me. But one day, Angela uttered the horrific words, "I am not a feminist." She went on to say, "It's just that all these feminazis are giving feminism a bad name. I believe women should get equal rights, but these days, feminism has become so extremist." Unfortunately, there are many women who share Angela's sentiments, who want to distance themselves from the bad reputation feminism is getting for being powerful enough of a force to destabilize power structures. Calling women feminazis is patriarchal propaganda. Of course, we are labeled as too much when we disrupt the status quo. This is a predictable reaction during a period of significant social change. This is more dangerous than all the other slurs women have been subject to over time. Slut, whore, bitch, cunt. They could no longer tear us down by criticizing our sexuality or assertiveness, so they went for the most extreme approach. No woman wants to be called a feminazi, and she will avoid anything that places her in that category. It is a very effective strategy. Even within our movement, we think long and hard about how to make our truth less abrasive and more palatable. We still play into the narrative of nice, approachable women. I am a good feminist, and could you please give me equal pay, sir? It took me some time to understand why women may say that they are not feminists. There is fear and stigma attached to this word. Women may worry that if they begin to side with the feminists, they will lose the protection provided by the man. He has certainly found a way to rule our words so that we are economically, legally, and socially dependent on his protection. We are propagandized to work hard our entire life to captivate men, to get them to shower their rare affection on us, to pick us from the hordes of other women fighting for the same. Calling yourself a feminist and acting as one may result in being cast out by your family, slapped by your husband, ostracized by the community. These are huge risks, and we simply cannot ask women to risk everything in the name of feminism. Sometimes, being able to speak up at the dining table in front of male relatives, or raise your hand in a classroom dominated by men, or tell a stranger that you are not interested in dating him is enough. Each woman's actions are contextual, and not everyone has the privilege or the courage to be an activist, or to even openly call herself a feminist. Some women arrive at feminism much later in life, and it's often the worst experiences that make us realize why the movement is so important. I feel empowered that I found feminism in my early 20s, and I hope to see younger women embrace it in their teens. We need to be more empathetic towards our sisters who have not arrived on the battlefield, teach from a place of love, and gently assist them to dismantleize their internalized misogyny. Then there are the women who do not call themselves feminists because they have become personally successful and are not concerned about the plight of others who are still struggling up the ladder. Can we really demand that they engage more in feminism? Has demanding something of someone ever really worked? We cannot control the worldview or actions of others. All we can control is ourselves.
Thank you, Nirvana ji. Now, to begin the questions, let's start from your intention. What discomfort or question originally sparked Unsanskari? Was there a specific moment that pushed you to start writing it?
So when I first saw Unsanskari lekhदाखेरि I didn't intend it to be the book that it is now. I started writing it as a travel memoir many years ago. And what it was a collection of travel stories. But over time it changed form. What compelled me to write Unsanskari Bani? I am in my early 30s. I know you guys are much younger, that one day you'll be at my age. And all the experiences I had, especially in my late teens and my 20s, slowly taught me more about the experiences that women have globally. And how much similarity there is between us, despite it, we might have grown up in different places. Of course, life experiences are different, but there are also so many things that unite us. And often it is experiences that are bad, where of like harassment or discrimination, of being overlooked, of sexism in our societies. So as I experienced more things, I started sharing more of my writing, my thoughts on social media. And the book that I have now, and that many of you have read, began to take form as what it is, as Unsanskari. Was there a moment or incident? Yes, I had a pretty bad experience around 10 years ago of harassment by a stranger. Obviously it impacted me very deeply negatively. I realized that this was not something that was only happening to me. That discrimination, harassment happens to women all around the world in different forms. So the feeling really first awoke the feminist in me. I started learning more about feminism, getting more into activism. That I think that was a moment when that seed was first planted, that, okay, our experience is very universal.
Thank you. And your book we even discussed your book intention resistance reflection or just reclaiming yourself. We kept discussion and wondering. And your book describe terms
I think it's a bit of everything. It was definitely a reflection. As a writer and how I became a writer, I've been writing informally, then formally for a very long time. My journal when I was like 9-10 years old. On this, reflecting on the experiences around me, the feelings I had. Let's say I was a very, very introverted child. I was very nerdy. I loved school. I kept a lot of thoughts to myself. And it made a refuge, the safe space for me to express my thoughts and feelings became my journal. So and we started, as I mentioned before, I started reflecting on the experiences that I had. So through reflections, I realized how many women, of course there's men as well who read my work, that especially young women, young Nepali women, could relate to my reflections on it. On त्यसरी नै, I think the more that I shared my experiences and reflections, and more momentum it gained, it became a reclamation and a resistance. Because book ma pani huncha ni, there's so many things I talk about that aren't openly talked about in society. मैले अहिले पढेको segment पनि, there might have been some words, some things I said that you think, oh my god, यस्तो त मैले कहिले सुनेको छैन, कहिले पढेको छैन, or maybe I've thought it but never really put words to it भनेर कि. So त्यस्तो चिजहरु चाहिँ to write about very openly, यसरी to publish it हुन्छ नि, is definitely a resistance and a reclamation.
Thank you. Moving forward, now that I've understood book काबाट intent भएर book को intention के हो भनेर, मलाई चाहिँ यसको criticsहरुमा I want to delve further into it. अनि यसको firstमा चाहिँ cultural critic आउँछ, since we live in a society. अनि what I want to ask is, how do class, caste and geography shape what it means to be sanskari or unsanskari? And were there aspects of cultural nuances you feel the book could not fully capture?
Yeah, I think that's very important question. Unsanskari bhaneko obviously is not a real word that's in the dictionary. मैले बनाएको यो word, and I want to talk a little bit about why I came to this word before we go into the question. So Sanskari bhaneko word I think is often used to describe specifically women. मैले जहिले सुनेको थिएँ since I was younger, it was applied to women as a woman should be a sanskari woman. And sanskar bhaneko ke ho? Maybe we can say it's about keeping our traditions, our culture alive, being someone who's respectful of the culture and also then respectful of society and her elders and all these things. So your sanskari bhanne chahi sabda nai is something that's really fascinated and intrigued me for a long time. And then the person I am, the woman I am, personality is a mix of so many things. Ma bahira धेरै बसे नेपाल बाहिर, and the Western influence भनौँ न त्यो पनि आयो. And your word on, of course, is English. So I thought your word Unsanskari describes me very well because I'm someone who has the mix of both cultures, right? Western culture, Nepali culture, and also someone who challenges traditional views, who's more unorthodox. But Unsanskari woman huna ke ho bhanera, it's a very personal thing, right? I hope that some of you, after you read the book, maybe you start feeling, oh, I'm also Unsanskari bhanera. I really would love if people started saying this and made this word popular. But definitely like caste, class and geography, that's what you said. That has a big impact on it because I'm raised in Kathmandu woman. Bahira basna gaye, my opportunities were different from people who have grown up outside of Kathmandu, Nepal, different areas. So those women, like someone, how much can they challenge societal norms can look very different based on where you live. And definitely that comes down to class and caste as well. I'm aware that there are privileges also in my life that has allowed me to get to this point and write this book and have the experiences I have. Tara, I think at the same time, in context, this situation, we can push the boundaries. Right? We can push against the things that we don't agree with. And this city, we can all be unsanskari in our own way.
Another question. I found myself thinking about, can rebellion exist meaningfully without privilege? I mean, we all rebel sometimes. We rebel, sano kurama, we rebel garirako हुन्छ, be it at home or our workplace or schools. But can it exist without privilege? And do you feel the book grapples with that tension openly enough?
Yeah, I think the alikati hamle touch on गरिसक्यौं. तर I do think rebellion can exist without privilege. किनकि हामीले, when we look at activist movement, feminist movement, or other human rights movements around the world, so much of people taking to the streets and protesting against their government, and Gen Z ka revolution पनि कुरा गरौँ. Many of these people are not born with privilege. Many people who are एकदमै working class or just have very normal everyday experiences, so on government oppression, on capitalism and patriarchy affects them very strongly. So when we see people taking to the streets demanding change, whether it's in political situation, whether in feminism, they come from all walks of life. And when we look at feminist movement, धेरै country not just Nepal, Iran, US, different countries in Europe, people who are coming out and demanding for their human rights are women from all walks of life. And that can be very effective. Solidarity, community action is the most amazing, extraordinary thing in terms of creating change in politics as well as मान्छेहरुको psyche and thinking. So त्यो is definitely possible. At the same time, I guess to get certain opportunities, there is privilege that comes with it. So मलाई, I know that I got to have an education, higher education बाहिर गएर, and I learned to write in English, read in English. I had the resources to be able to self-publish my book. Those are of course things that happened because of my privilege. Ani, so many women would already be writing across Nepal, having the same thoughts as I have, that they're not being able to platform it in the same way I have through social media or through a book. So of course, त्यो सबै resources पाएपछि it does become easier to share your thoughts.
Thank you. Now that we have completed the second segment, I would like to move on with the narrative and the ethics of this book. तपाईले चाहिँ यो बुकमा कस्तो मजाले vulnerability र clarity लाई ब्यालेन्स गरेर लेख्नु भएको छ नि त, बट हाम्रो vulnerability पनि हामीले शेप गर्न मिल्छ कि, like we choose what to show and what not to show. So how much of your personal narrative is emotional truth and how much is deliberately crafted?
So as I said before, my first experience in writing came from journaling since I was a very young girl. So त्यो was always a way for me to make sense of my internal or external world. I was shy, I was introverted. अरूहरुसँग मैले जे share गर्न सकिन, मेरो parents, मेरो family सँग. The journal became my safe space to be able to do that. So my writing was very much born out of personal experience. All my writing, as you see in my book, and all पनि formatहरुमा, my writing is also always एकदमै personal, एकदमै vulnerable. A fiction, I don't write fiction at all. I write always non-fiction, essay, mini essay, and they all come from my personal experience and what they taught me about the world. So it has all started off as emotional truth, that I realized that when you want to become a professional writer or write for the public, you have to craft it in a certain way. So there's a balance of both. It's also about kotiko raw you want to be. So I don't know how many, is anyone in the room writers or wants to be writers? Hands. 1, 2. Okay. Maybe more if you over time, 3. But you are very vulnerable with your feelings and thoughts. You kind of, anyways, I dump everything out onto the page, but you might not necessarily want to share all of that with the world. So this was, I learned how to edit, self-edit, and my editor also helped me a lot in the book. But of course, the audience and the readers, they need to know about this. They don't need to know every single thing you think or feel, and maybe you also don't feel comfortable sharing all of that with the readers. So this is I also learned how to develop my craft, and that's relevant for writing, not just esto type of writing, but any writing, is that you have to learn how to edit and refine your craft, which is writing, in a way where the audience can relate and get the most out of it. And that might mean that you don't get to keep everything that you want to write. It might mean like, okay, repetitive thoughts, which made a book one day. So like, as in oil, that takes but like there was many repetitive thoughts, many things I feel passionately about that I talk about again and again. But then you have to think, okay, audience like यही कुरा 10 वटी सुन्नु पर्छ त पर्दैन होला, right? So कहाँ राख्यो भने सबै सबभन्दा most effective हुन्छ. And remembering that the book is partly for myself, but also mainly for the readers. So मैले नचिनेको मान्छेहरुलाई, what are they gaining out of it? Are they getting the message that I want them to get?
Thank you. As you said, तपाईले आफै भन्नुभयो that this book consists of your personal life भनेर हजुरले आफ्नो experiences-बाट लेख्नु भएको हो. त्यहाँ चाहिँ कतिवटा मोमेन्ट्सहरू थियो जहाँ आफै तपाईले हजुरले आफैलाई सेन्सर गर्नु पर्यो, लाइक अब सोसाइटीको फियरले नभएर, but to protect people close to you. अनि how did you navigate the ethics of writing about real relationships?
So my first thing that was a difficult process. I'm sure we've all had experiences, especially in Nepali context. Now let's talk about family, right? Families are a complex relationship. Of course, there's probably people within our parents, grandparents, uncle, auntie, whatever, that we feel close to and that we can be honest with them about. There are our extended family who don't understand us, who might say offensive things to us, who might judge us, and whether that's about like body shaming, colorism, whether it's about I'm like keep porn months or pressure, biako pressure, So those are things more I feel very passionately about speaking out about. And in my book I talk about patriarchy in my family, in my household. But I really had to think, okay, how can I write about this without hurting someone's feeling that I know and love too deeply? And it was something I really my editor had to work on this, and even my immediate family. I have many experiences that maybe affected me negatively growing up. But that I want to reveal without having them read the book and feel bad. And you don't ever want your loved ones to feel bad about themselves. Of course, everyone does and says things after context, after experiences. So I decided, me and my editor, let's keep some of those experiences that are not in a way that's very harsh on anyone I love, but then retaining the essence of the message I'm trying to say. So I'll repeat what I was going back to, patriarchy in the house. I think all of us experience that, Hamro families, Hamro traditions can be very deeply sexist, and it always prioritizes male co-comfort. So this topic, which is relevant to all of us, I was like, okay, कसरी त्यसकोलाई interrogate गर्ने, कसरी त्यसकोलाई critically analyze गर्ने, but without pointing fingers at anyone I know. So that was something I found balance in, and that's really through a careful editing process. Ani arko चाहिँ was धेरै characters that I've named, मेरो पहिलाको partners, friends that I learned stuff from. अनि उनीहरुको चाहिँ सबैजनाको नाम I changed, all the names are fake within the book, to protect their.
Okay, thank you. Also, now moving into the big part of this conversation, the book itself, feminism, and feminism भएपछि हाम्रो representation, हामीले कसरी represent गर्छ त्यसलाई. अनि also यो एउटा book एकचोटि पढ्दामा चाहिँ we know that it reflects a very urban, educated woman को life अनि उसको experiences. तर अब not everyone, even we are privileged enough to be studying here, to be talking in front of everyone, but not everyone has got that privilege. So criticsहरु चाहिँ तपाईले exclude गर्नुभयो भनेर आउँदाखेरि कसरी respond गर्नुहुन्छ or कसरी handle गर्नुहुन्छ?
The first thing that I say is that one, the book is मेरो personal experiences. It is not an analysis of feminism within Nepal. It is not a collection of sabai Nepali women's stories, Ani, because it's just मेरो lived experiences, I can only speak for myself and for the people I know and the people I've interacted with. So that's really important to remember. Your book I was very actively writing about feminism, social media for many years. So I would hear criticisms that okay, timi upper caste women, you cannot speak on behalf of everyone. And I keep saying I'm not trying to. I'm just showing mero after reality and the reality of the people I know. And that's why there needs to be more space for women writers and thinkers in general. And I want to encourage everyone here on Sunny, even if you're very interested in reading and you've never written before, write about Afne experience, about the women that you know. Get it out on paper. It doesn't mean you have to publish it anymore. It doesn't mean you have to share it with anyone. But we really need Nepalma, especially more women writers and more young women writers. Only then when we build visibility amongst women creatives can we see more narratives and experiences represented. So yeah, I always come back to that. I cannot speak on behalf of everyone. I also say this when people say, hey, okay, you're not representative of the identity of the Nepali woman. And in my book, I explore that the Nepali woman, who is the Nepali woman, right? There's no such thing, because we all are so different. Our experiences are so different. Ek janale cannot represent the whole population of Nepali womanhood. And I don't claim to, your book is ek janako experience. So we just need more Nepali women's voices in general in writing.
Thank you. Now, that तपाईले आफै भन्नुभयो voices and stories को कुरा. तपाईलाई चाहिँ के लाग्छ कि यो बुकले कस्तो voices र stories-हरु चाहिँ represent गर्दैन र why? And also, what are the gaps that you are most aware of? यहाँ चाहिँ gap छ है भनेर चाहिँ कस्तो कुराहरुमा तपाईलाई थाहा छ?
I think अलिकति I already touched on in the previous question होला. तर I'm hoping to write more books, right? This is just my first book. But I'm very passionate about storytelling as a collective. So I've started 2 projects in the past. The most recent, the Feminism Project Nepal. And त्यो चाहिँ is a digital platform for feminist storytelling. And Nepali women, yeah, as well as across the diaspora, they can submit after story to the platform. So this city, I think, building collective spaces, I know, places that everyone can submit their writing to. Again, I have representation of really diverse stories. Okay? So I think that's really important. And my next book, hopefully in the next 2 years, I want to share will be an anthology, so a collection of different women's stories. And त्यो चाहिँ नेपालमा प्लस म धेरै ट्राभल गरेको छु. The countries I went to, I was always collecting stories of women, oral stories, very like direct conversational I record गरेर. So my next book मा चाहिँ I want to include all those stories to show that okay, our experiences are so diverse भनेर. So I definitely acknowledge your book मा चाहिँ त्यो topic हैन, that was not the theme of the book, but I think that's very important to explore.
Thank you. Now, moving forward, Malachi, I want to ask you that do you see your feminism as disruptive, accessible, or something in between? अनि तपाईले चाहिँ आफ्नो आइडियल रिडर चाहिँ को हो त भनेर सोच्नु भएको थियो लेख्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ?
I want it to be all of them. Right? I want my feminism to be disruptive and accessible. While reading the book, you probably found, I think, that the language is pretty simple. मलाई त्यो एकदमै हुन्छ नि academic words, academic jargonहरु अलिअलि छ होला maybe हैन, तर I wanted to stray away from that as much as possible किनकि I did not study feminism university मा है, मेरो background was public health or social work पढेको म. So feminism writing I came into it from my own interest. So मलाई त्यो feminist theory bookहरु, although they've taught me a lot, it's very complex कि you have to really study at the university level मा to be able to understand what it's saying. अनि मलाई चाहिँ मेरो book, I did not want it to be like that. I wanted it to be that कसैले हुन्छ नि, of course English त it's written in English, तर anyone can pick up the book and be able to understand the message of what I'm saying भनेर. So it's really important for me to keep that accessible. I also definitely have views, beliefs that are maybe more radical, है. अनि त्यो पनि अलिकति मैले tone down नै गरे in this book on purpose. Because again, I said, I want it to be accessible. I want people, maybe even people who've never agreed with feminism or even thought about feminism, you know, to be able to pick up the book and be like, hey, actually, I agree with this. Actually, this makes sense. And त्यो म एउटा story share गर्छु that दशैंको बेलामा मेरो grandma, who's 90 years old, she was encouraging me, भर्खर book release हुन लाग्थ्यो हैन, and she said, Nirvana, हाम्रो घरमा जो टीका लाउन आउँछ सबैलाई book किन्न लगाऊ, all of our family, है. And I was like, okay, and she was so supportive. She's so supportive. She's 90 years old, eh? My grandma arranged marriage back when she was 9 years old, imagine. And although she's never received education of her own, she's been so supportive for me to be publishing this book, although she cannot understand what So त्यो बेलामा I sold a bunch of my books to सबै मेरो relatives, है. अनि एउटा uncle किन्नु भएको थियो, त्यो uncle लाई मैले राम्रोसँग चिन्दा नि चिन्दिनँ. And maybe a month later, I saw him again at a family party. And he was like, Nirvana, I read your whole book भन्यो है, अलिकति weird tone मा. And I was like, oh shit, के भन्ला यो uncle-ले मलाई, like what is he gonna say about my book? And I was like, अनि कस्तो लाग्यो त तपाईलाई? And he was like, I agree with your thoughts on feminism. And I'll always remember it because this uncle was like in his 60s, who I did not think would find any relevance मेरो book मा, or not even मेरो target audience. While that he could find something that he agreed with is something that I'm like, wow, this is a positive, and this is something I also didn't expect, you know. Ani, my ideal reader ko थियो question. My ideal reader is everyone like you. I think my Instagram account लेख्दाखेरि मेरो biggest readership is young women from the ages of 18 to 35. Maybe you don't consider 35 young, but technically it is. So between 18 and 35 is my main readership, and I really wrote it for really like people like you who will have some stuff in common with me, but maybe you have a lot of views that are very similar, and that you are understanding what it means to be a feminist, what it means to question the things that happen to us that we don't agree with, our family, our society, and also to develop the courage to live life on your own terms. There pressure, of course, from society, from our families, but I think it's so possible. 20-25 months, you're all studying, you have gained higher education. There's definitely so much more opportunities than that existed for our mom's generation, our grandmother's generation. So we can definitely, if we're brave and courageous, we are able to have that autonomy. We are able to make our own money. We are able to say, no, this is the life that I want to live, and I really want that to be the message.
Thank you. Again, keeping the audience in mind brings me to another dimension that fascinated me, the possibility of misinterpretation. Your book, तपाईँको बुकमा कति धेरै कुराहरू छ जुन चाहिँ मिसइन्टरप्रेट हुन सक्छ नि त. So has any critic or backlash so far made you reconsider your own assumptions or your intentions while writing?
Not yet. I think the uncle story shows that I was scared of that uncle's response, right? That it was literally like, I agree with it. I was like, oh, okay. This today, I honestly add so far. But I'm open to hearing it, okay? Because I feel very confident about the material I have in the book. And criticism, I have made a defense ready. I have a rationale, I have a reason for writing everything in the book. It's very, very intentional. Okay? So त्यो भएपछि कसैको केही हुन्छ नि मलाई यो चित्त बुझेन भने पनि if नराम्रै तरिकाले भनेको छ भने I just say, look, I can't do anything about it. Book निस्किसक्यो, there's all these copies in the world. If you don't like it, you don't like it. And that's very similar to like maybe you'll watch a film, right? Movie that you're like, I hate this movie. You're not gonna go to the director of the movie and say, I hate your movie. Or भने पनि के गर्न सक्छ के गर्न मिल्दैन. It's personal preference, right? You don't like every creation that's out in the world, every movie, every book, anything. But it's out there and maybe it's just not for you. So maybe I would say that to critics, either they're not made a target audience. I have not written it so that it's appealing to every single person. I've written it so that it's honest. I've written it so that it's sharing views that I think are very important. But I'm not writing it to appeal to everyone. Okay? So if someone says to me, "Malai yo man parena, malai yo bhayo eta uti," I say, "Look, okay, so don't read it, right? No one asked you to read it, so it's fine."
So yeah. Also, to close the thematic part of our conversations, I want to explore the unsaid, the silences and the ages. हाम्रो त्यो कतिवटा unresolved parts are. So yeah, let's move on to that. Like I mentioned earlier, मैले भनेको थिएँ कति धेरै deeper tensionsहरू छ बुकमा चाहिँ जुन चाहिँ अब beneath the surface छ अनि things fully not hinted at, like कुनै paragraphsहरू चाहिँ that तपाईँले sentence लेख्नु भएको छ अनि it does not make it to the end of the paragraph कि end मा आएर त्यो कुरा फेरि छैन अनि मलाई चाहिँ के this was my like intention चाहिँ के थियो त तपाईको story identity or criticहरू तपाईले चाहिँ के चाहिँ लुकाउनु भयो त hide गर्नु भयो unresolved राख्नु भयो and if it was again intentional थियो कि or it just happened with the flow while writing भनेर
yeah, I don't think it was really intentional त्यस्तो त थिएन है there definitely there's subtopics within the book किनकि bookमा there's 8 chapters and 8 chapters भित्र पनि I have subheadings हैन so त्यसमा to keep it within I guess the flow and the structure and word count पनि हो I didn't want it to be एकदमै लामो I wanted it to be like when you even see it not something that's so thick that देख्ने बित्तिकै you're like oh my god मलाई पढ्न मन छैन because there's too much, right? So I'm very happy with this length. But there are definitely subtopics that can be explored more to this for sure, you know? Because the world of feminism, the world of just introspection even is untapped. It goes on forever and ever. You can talk about things forever, right? So maybe that's why alikati to feel bad ni huna saksa. And the other thing is I'm still growing and evolving as a person. We all are, you know. So I'm 33 years old. अहिले someone experiences that I've understood, my perspectives, I'm able to share bookma. But I still don't know what I don't know, right? So ma sikhte chu other life lessons. We never stop growing, and I think that's something also so important that to see growth, to see growing up or becoming an adult is not something that ever stops. So maybe you all have in mind something like, okay, I'm 25 or whatever long, everything will be sorted, I'll have a job and then I'll get married and I'll be a full adult, But I've learned over time there's no such thinking. Adults when we still make mistakes, we still learn something and then we fuck up and then we go back to square one. We still want new things, we still feel confused about things. So maybe things that are in the book potential will be things I learn over time. And I'm sure maybe after 5 years or after 10 years, when I read this book again, maybe there'll be some parts where I think, oh my god, hopefully not. I hope nothing I'll be like so embarrassed about. Then I'm sure there'll be things that I think, wow, I know so much more about that topic now. I learned more about myself. I experienced the things in the world. So the potential it's maybe that will be in the book that comes out in 10 years.
Also, now that we are nearing to the end, I wanted to ask you, what do you hope readers' questions about themselves after reading this book?
I'll share a little bit of that and I'll let you to the reader because I think that sums it up very well. I want, actually I'm going because I think it's perfect and it answers that question. So I'm reading the last bit of middle book, which is a letter to the reader. On Oyekolai, let's say it's a letter to the audience, to all of you. I wrote this book because over the years of sharing my experiences and opinions online, I realized that thousands of women felt exactly as I did. What I treasure most are the moments strangers, sisters, wrote to me or approached me with tears in their eyes, telling me my words gave them courage, that me living authentically inspired them to claim their own lives fully. I know that there are so many Nepali girls and women scattered across the world who carry the same thoughts, the same wounds and longings, but whose voices remain unspoken, stilled by fear, hesitation, or the absence of a space to be heard. I have written this book for you. I hope my words have sparked a deep curiosity in you so you begin to question within your own life, am I a feminist? Am I queer? How has compulsory heterosexuality shaped my beliefs? At what point in my girlhood did I lose my voice? What are things about my culture that I want to disregard? Do I actually want to get married? Do I want to have children? What am I truly passionate about? What do I want my life to look like? It is incredibly inspiring to see more women stepping into their power and questioning the patriarchal structures that have raised us. I see it in the reclamation of the word feminist, in conversations about consent and rape culture, in LGBTQIA+ activism, in the body positivity movement, and in resistance to cultural practices like arranged marriage and menstrual stigma. Politicians, male bosses, teachers, uncles, they are being called out, held accountable for their abuse of power. More of us are daring to walk past the boundaries drawn for us, to chase our dreams across the world, carving paths our mothers could only imagine. So I dare you to question the beauty standards etched into your psyche, the propaganda of the right way to be a woman, the idea that culture is stagnant when patriarchal culture rarely serves our best interests. Have honest conversations with your families and partners about your needs, your fears, your vulnerability, your rage. Challenge the patriarchs in your life. Openly criticize sexist statements, expectations, norms, jokes. Make friends with as many girls and women as possible and unlearn the idea that they are your competitors. Support women businesses, entrepreneurs, professionals everywhere you can. Don't be afraid to defy society and convention if it means you get to live the most gorgeous, authentic, fulfilling version of your life. Do not be afraid to be assertive, outspoken, a difficult woman, a bitch, Unsanskari.
Thank you.